The fluorescent lights hummed steadily in the underground bunkers beneath Tokyo's Imperial General Headquarters. It was 8:30 a.m. on August 6, 1945, and the oppressive summer humidity carried the weight of a nation that had been at war for nearly 4 years. Staff officers in sweat-stained khaki uniforms leaned over communication boards, moving pins across sprawling wall maps that depicted the shrinking perimeter of the Japanese Empire. General Korechika Anami, Japan's war minister, strode with the rigid confidence of a career soldier who had never known defeat. At 58, his weathered face projected an unshakable belief in Japan's divine destiny. The morning briefing should have been routine. Overnight reports from garrison commanders across the home islands, updates on the massive Ketugo defensive preparations designed to make any American invasion unbearably costly. But something was wrong. The communication board for the Chugoku military district was empty. No reports from Hiroshima's 2nd General Army Headquarters. No updates from the 400,000 civilians and military personnel of Japan's 8th largest city. Radio operators twisted dials, hearing only static where they expected crackling reports. "Sir, we've lost all contact with Hiroshima," a young communications officer stammered, sweat dripping despite the underground cool. "All military frequencies, all civilian radio, everything went silent around 8:15 this morning." Anami's dark eyes narrowed. 4 years of total war had taught him one lesson. Entire cities did not simply vanish from the communication grid, especially ones with major military headquarters. What force on earth could silence 340,000 people in an instant? To understand the mindset of these 6 men who controlled Japan's fate, one must know the Supreme War Council, the Big Six. They believed they held the keys to victory, even as American B-29 seconds reduced cities to ash nightly. General Anami, Admiral Somu, Toyota, General Yoshiro Umezu, Prime Minister Admiral Kantaro Suzuki, Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo, and Navy Minister Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai. 70 million lives hung in the balance, yet they were confident in their knowledge. What made them dangerously confident was their understanding of atomic weapons, or rather, their belief in what was impossible. Since 1940, Japan had been developing its own atomic bomb. The Army's NEGO project under Dr. Yoshio Nishina and the Navy's FGO program under Dr. Bansaku Arakatsu. These were not amateur efforts. Nishina, who had worked with Niels Bohr in Copenhagen, was one of the world's leading nuclear physicists. He knew atomic fission's theoretical foundations better than almost anyone alive, and that knowledge had taught him one vital lesson. Producing an atomic bomb was virtually impossible with current industrial means. Uranium enrichment required facilities of unimaginable scale, massive electromagnetic separation plants, thousands of tons of uranium ore, power consumption that could drain entire regions. Even the United States, with its unscathed industrial base, could perhaps produce 1 or 2 atomic weapons at most. The Japanese military leaders, steeped in this knowledge, dismissed reports as exaggerated or impossible. Scattered intelligence reports began filtering in. B-29 seconds, attacking Hiroshima with a new type of bomb, considerable damage observed. Admiral Toyota, accustomed to the destruction of 42 cities by incendiary raids, barely reacted. A few bombers causing considerable damage was not unprecedented, just an escalation in efficiency, he thought. But then reports grew stranger. Train schedules to Hiroshima had been indefinitely suspended. Military communications remained cut. Most unsettling, a reconnaissance plane reported a mushroom-shaped cloud rising 40,000 feet. Finally, President Truman's shortwave radio broadcast was intercepted, 16 hours earlier. An American 20-24, the plane had dropped a bomb on Hiroshima, a Japanese army base. The device had a destructive power equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT. It was an atomic bomb. Silence enveloped the council. Anami's voice finally broke through, calm yet defiant. The Americans are engaged in psychological warfare. Even if they developed some atomic device, mass production is impossible. Our research confirms this. Toyota nodded grimly. If the Americans had an arsenal, they would have used it months ago. This was a desperate gambit, likely their only device. Yet their scientific certainty had blinded them. They could calculate limits, but could not fathom the scale of American industrial capability. The Manhattan Project, with 130,000 workers across multiple states, consuming more power than entire nations, representing the largest secret industrial undertaking in history. The Japanese generals made decisions based on what they thought was possible, unaware they were facing an enemy who had redefined possibility. As August 6th turned into August 7th, investigation teams headed to Hiroshima to assess the devastation. Dr. Yoshio Nishina, a man who had theorized atomic explosions on paper, witnessed the unimaginable reality firsthand. The train ride from Tokyo took 11 hours, passing a landscape twisted and scarred, trees stripped bare, telephone poles snapped, a burning acrid smell in the air. The tracks ended, warped beyond recognition. Nishina walked the final 5 miles into Hiroshima, encountering a scene no theoretical calculation could have predicted. Buildings were not merely destroyed, they were vaporized. Shadows of humans were etched into concrete walls, ghosts frozen in the last instant of life. The hypocenter, where the bomb had detonated 1,000 feet above the ground, was a perfect circle of absolute annihilation. Survivors were horrific evidence of radiation sickness, skin peeling, hair clumps falling, vomiting blood, walking shells of humanity. Nishina's hands shook as he measured the radiation with a Geiger counter. The clicking intensified, approaching ground zero. This was not conventional warfare. The fundamental forces of the universe had been unleashed on a city. Everything Nishina had believed about atomic weapons was catastrophically wrong. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the Supreme War Council was about to face a reality Hiroshima alone had foreshadowed. At 11:02 a.m., on August 9th, 1945, the Big Six convened to discuss the reports from Hiroshima. An aide burst into the room, delivering news that drained the color from every face. Nagasaki had been attacked with another atomic bomb. Silence followed, broken only by the faint clatter of Admiral Toyota's pen on the mahogany table. 3 days after Hiroshima, everything they had assumed about the war collapsed. If the Americans had 2 atomic bombs, they could have 3, 10, or 100. The entire foundation of Japan's defensive strategy bleed the Americans in a costly invasion, so they would negotiate was suddenly meaningless. Why invade when cities could simply be erased one by one? Yet even in the face of this apocalyptic reality, General Anami could not abandon his vision of honorable death over dishonored survival. Would it not be wondrous, he asked quietly, for this whole nation to be destroyed like a beautiful flower? His colleagues stared in stunned silence. Anami's commitment to the samurai code was absolute. National extinction seemed preferable to surrender. In his mind, there was an aesthetic perfection in Japan's disappearance under atomic fire, rather than bowing to foreign occupiers. Reality, however, intruded in an unexpected form. On August 10th, Japanese forces captured an American fighter pilot, Marcus McDilder, shot down 2 days after Hiroshima. Interrogated under duress, McDilder provided what would ultimately shatter Japanese resistance. He knew nothing of atomic bombs. He was a conventional fighter pilot, but desperate to survive, he fabricated details the interrogators wanted to hear. According to McDilder, the Americans had over 100 atomic bombs, capable of delivering 3 per day. Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, every major Japanese city would soon be obliterated. None of it was true. In reality, the United States had 0 bombs remaining. The next weapon would not be ready until late August. But McDilder's lies, laced with technical-sounding details, were convincing. When these false intelligence reports reached the Supreme War Council, they landed like a final crushing blow. Anami, reading from the report, noted that 1 atomic bomb could destroy 6 square miles, equivalent to 2,000 B-29 seconds, armed with 300 conventional bombs each. According to McDilder, the Americans possessed 100 atomic bombs, ready to target Tokyo next. The room was tense, the sound of Admiral Suzuki's labored breathing echoing in the chamber. These men had commanded millions of soldiers, orchestrated campaigns across the Pacific, and never experienced defeat. Yet they faced a weapon that rendered their expertise as obsolete as samurai swords in the age of machine guns. Deadlock persisted. 3 votes for surrender, 3 votes to continue fighting despite certain annihilation. Breaking this stalemate required unprecedented intervention. Just before midnight on August 9th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito, the living god who had traditionally remained above earthly decisions, personally intervened. In a scene unparalleled in over 1,000 years of Japanese history, the 6 council members and Baron Kichiro Hironuma knelt around a polished table as the emperor spoke. Small in stature, yet imbued with divine authority, he uttered words that would end not only a war but an entire approach to warfare itself. I have given serious consideration to the situation at home and abroad. We must bear the unbearable and suffer what is insufferable. In that moment, Japan's military leaders faced the matfers. Japan's military leaders faced the past, ultimate choice between honor and survival. Some, like Prime Minister Suzuki, accepted reality. Others, like General Anami, chose the path of the warrior. On August 15th, just hours before the emperor's surrender broadcast, Anami performed ritual seppuku in his home. He died as he had lived, according to the samurai code, leaving a final poem written in his own blood, an expression of loyalty and regret that he could not serve longer. He never acknowledged that the world had irreversibly changed. Admiral Toyota, who had so confidently dismissed the possibility of mass atomic production, became perhaps the most tragic figure. After the war, when the full scope of the Manhattan Project was revealed and the scale of American industrial achievement became clear, he reportedly spent hours staring at photographs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in stunned silence. The atomic bombings had not merely ended World War II. They had ended a philosophy of warfare built on honor, sacrifice, and conventional strategy. Modern military planners study this story not simply as history, but as a warning about the dangers of cognitive blindness in leadership. Expertise, cultural confidence, and professional knowledge can become prisons, preventing leaders from recognizing revolutionary change. Artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, and space-based weapons pose similar challenges today. The Japanese military could not comprehend America's atomic capabilities because they had convinced themselves it was impossible. Their own knowledge, their certainty, became the instrument of their defeat. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is not across the battlefield but within one's own mind. Believing you understand the rules of the game while others have already changed them can be fatal. Japan's generals had mastered conventional warfare, yet they were blind to the unimaginable. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not only the death of cities, they were the death of an entire way of thinking about war. The story of August 1945 reminds us that leadership is not just about knowledge or experience, it is about adaptability, humility, and the courage to confront realities that defy prior understanding. The atomic bombings are a testament to both human ingenuity and human fallibility, an enduring lesson about the limits of certainty in an uncertain world.